Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. The Uns Valiant had been patrolling this empty sector of space for 3 weeks now. It was quiet work, but someone had to do it. The ship was one of humanity's newest deep space explorers, built to find new worlds and make contact with alien life. Jake was 42 years old and had spent half his life in space. His dark hair was starting to show gray at the edges, and his blue eyes had seen more wonders than most people could imagine. Today felt like any other day in the vast emptiness between stars. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lisa Park from her station. She was the ship's communications officer, a young woman with quick fingers and sharper ears. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail as she bent over her equipment. Jake turned in his chair. "What kind of strange?" "It's a signal, sir. But it's not human. The pattern is all wrong." Lisa's face showed confusion as she adjusted her controls. "It keeps repeating every 30 seconds. Chief Engineer Maria Santos looked up from her console. She was a tough woman from Earth's colonies, with grease under her fingernails and knowledge of every bolt on the ship. Could be equipment failure. These old radio telescopes sometimes pick up echoes from dead stars. "No, this is different," Lisa said. She played the signal through the speakers. Strange sounds filled the bridge, clicks, whistles, and what sounded like crying. "There's a pattern here. This isn't natural." Dr. Alex Turner hurried onto the bridge. He was the ship's expert on alien languages, though he had never heard a real one before today. Alex was thin and pale from spending too much time reading books. Instead of exercising, his hands shook with excitement as he listened to the sounds. "Play it again," Alex said. Lisa repeated the signal. Alex closed his eyes and listened carefully. There are emotional markers in those sounds. Fear, desperation. This is a language, and whoever is speaking is terrified. Ben Carter, the tactical officer, stood up from his station. He was a big man with scars on his face from his days as a Marine. "Sir, should I put the ship on alert?" Jake thought for a moment. "Yet. Alex, how long do you need to understand what they're saying?" "Give me a few hours. Maybe less if I can find the right patterns." Alex was already heading back to his lab with a recording of the signal. The next 3 hours felt like 3 days. Jake walked around the bridge, checking on his crew. Maria worked on keeping the ship's engines running smoothly. Ben watched the sensors for any signs of danger. Lisa kept listening to the signal, trying to help Alex figure out its meaning. Finally, Alex came back to the bridge. His face was white, and his hands were shaking worse than before. "Captain, you need to hear this." Jake nodded. "Put it on the speakers." Alex had cleaned up the signal and programmed the computer to translate the alien words into English. What came through the speakers made everyone on the bridge go silent. "Please, anyone who can hear this message. We are the Zalani people of Zalera Prime. We are dying. The Vorthok came from the dark between stars. They hunt us like animals. They take our children and put them in cages. Our cities burn. Our people scream in the night." The voice paused, and they could hear crying in the background. "We have sent this message to every star we can reach. We do not know if anyone will hear us. We do not know if anyone will care. The Vorthok eat other thinking beings. They have done this to 17 worlds in our sector. We are next. We're there. Is any mercy in the universe? If there are others who believe that thinking beings should be free, please help us. We do not have much time." The message ended with star charts showing the location of Zalera Prime. Jake stared at the screen, feeling sick to his stomach. "How far away are they?" Jake asked. 2 weeks at maximum speed," Maria said quietly. "But Captain, we're just one ship. We don't know what we'd be flying into." Ben checked his tactical display. The Zalani said, 17 worlds have been destroyed. Whatever these Vorthok are, they're not playing games. Lisa looked up from her station. "There's more, sir. Been monitoring other frequencies. The signal is being sent in different directions, to different star systems. But I don't think anyone else is answering." Jake stood up and walked to the front of the bridge. He looked out at the stars and thought about the crying voice and the alien message. Somewhere out there, people were dying. Children were being put in cages. An entire civilization was about to disappear forever. "Alex, is there any chance this is fake? Some kind of trick?" Alex shook his head. The emotional patterns are too real. The language is too complex. You can't fake this level of detail. People are really suffering. What are your orders, Captain? Ben asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his duty to Earth and to his crew. The Zilani system was far from human space. They had no treaty with these aliens. No legal reason to help them. But he also thought about the voice in the message, begging for mercy in a cold universe. Maria, how fast can you push the engines? I can give you 15% over normal speed, but it'll stress the systems. Do it, Ben. Send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them what we've found and where we're going. Lisa, see if you can reach the Zilani. Tell them help is coming, Sir Ben said carefully. We're one ship against an enemy that's destroyed. 17 worlds. Jake turned to face his crew. Maybe we are. But those people asked for help, and no one else is answering. I won't be able to sleep at night knowing we could have tried and didn't. Maria smiled and started pushing more power to the engines. I always wanted to meet aliens, just hoped it would be under better circumstances. We all did, Jake said. But sometimes you don't get to choose your circumstances. You just get to choose what you do about them. The Uns Valiant turned toward the Zilani system and jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, Earth was 2 months away. Ahead of them, an alien species waited for salvation that might never come. Jake sat back in his command chair and watched. The stars stretch into lines of light. He had made his choice. Now, he had to live with the consequences, whatever they might be. In his personal log that night, he wrote, "We go not as conquerors or explorers, but as protectors. If humanity stands for anything, it should stand for the idea that no thinking being should suffer while others have the power to help." The ship flew through the darkness toward an uncertain fate, carrying the hopes of a species that had never seen a human face. Admiral Patricia Hayes stood on the command deck of the massive space station New Geneva, watching the biggest fleet assembly in human history. Through the huge windows, she could see dozens of warships gathering in formation. More ships arrived. Every hour from colonies across human space, Patricia was 55 years old and had commanded fleets for 20 years. Her gray hair was cut short, and her green eyes were sharp as steel. She had fought pirates and settled border disputes, but nothing had prepared her for this. The message from Captain Morrison's ship had reached Earth 3 days ago. The response was like nothing she had ever seen. "Admiral, the Manchester battle group just arrived from the outer colonies," reported Commander Steve Phillips. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Was her aide a young officer with black hair and quick thinking? That brings us to 17 battle groups total. Good. What about civilian ships? Over 200 have volunteered for support roles. Supply ships, medical vessels, even some mining craft that want to help. Steve looked at his datapad. The Colonial Council has approved emergency funding. Every major corporation is sending supplies. Patricia nodded. She had expected military support, but the civilian response surprised her. Families were donating food and medical supplies. Students were volunteering to work in support roles. The entire human species seemed united by the alien distress call. "Admiral," said Amy Chen, the intelligence officer. She was a small woman, with sharp eyes who specialized in enemy tactics. "We have a problem. We know almost nothing about these Vorthok. Zilani signal gives us some information, but not enough to plan a battle."
What do we know?
They're predators who treat other species as food. They've destroyed 17 worlds in that sector. They have advanced technology and ships that can travel between stars. Beyond that, we're flying blind. Patricia walked to the tactical display showing the Zilani system. "We need eyes on the target. Steve, is the Shadow ready for deployment?" "Yes." "Admiral Commander Phillips and his team are standing by." "Good, send them ahead for reconnaissance. I want to know what we're dealing with before we commit the main fleet." 2 days later, the stealth destroyer Shadow dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zilani system. Commander Steve Phillips looked at the sensor readings and felt his stomach turn. The outer planets showed signs of massive strip mining. Space was filled with debris from destroyed ships and orbital installations, Take us in slowly, Steve told his pilot. Full stealth mode. Tony Blake, the combat engineer, studied his sensors, reading massive energy signatures from the inner system. Whatever's happening there, it's big. Amy Chen worked at the intelligence station, picking up radio transmissions. Multiple sources, but the patterns are wrong. Some of these signals are mechanical, like computer systems. Others sound organic, almost like breathing. As they moved deeper into the system, the true horror became clear. Zalera Prime, the Zalani homeworld, was covered with huge metal structures. From orbit, they looked like factories, but the energy readings suggested something much worse. Those aren't factories, Steve said quietly. They're processing plants. Processing what? Tony asked, though he already knew the answer. People. They're processing people. Amy enhanced the sensor readings. I'm detecting life signs in those structures. Thousands of them, maybe millions. They're all concentrated in small areas, like they're being held in pens. Steve felt anger building. In his chest, take us down for a closer look. Stay hidden, but I want to see this with my own eyes. The shadow descended through the planet's atmosphere, using its stealth technology to avoid detection. What they saw on the surface made everyone on the bridge go quiet. Huge metal buildings stretched across what had once been beautiful cities. Conveyor belts moved between the buildings, carrying cage after cage of Zalani prisoners. The aliens looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and large eyes. They moved slowly, like people who had given up hope. Look at the size of those facilities, Tony whispered. They're processing an entire planet? Amy pointed to another part of the display. And look at those ships. The Vorthok vessels were unlike anything humans had ever seen. They were organic-looking, like giant insects made of metal and flesh. Some were as big as cities, with tendrils that reached down to the planet's surface. Others were smaller but still massive compared to human ships. Can you get biological readings on the Vorthok themselves? Steve asked. Amy worked her controls, partial readings only. They're big, at least 12 feet tall, heavy bone structure, like natural predators. I'm detecting cybernetic implants throughout their bodies. They've modified themselves with technology. Steve made a decision. We need prisoners. I want to know what we're fighting. They landed the shadow in a forest area away from the processing centers. Steve led a small team on foot toward the nearest facility. With them went Tony and Amy, plus 4 Marines in stealth armor. The facility was even worse up close. They could hear sounds from inside, machinery grinding, aliens crying, and something else that made their skin crawl. It was a sound like hundreds of creatures breathing together, but wrong somehow. There, Amy pointed to a smaller building. Sensors show only a few life signs. This might be a temporary holding area. They moved carefully through the shadows. The building was made of the same organic metal as the ships. It felt warm to the touch, like it was alive. Tony placed small explosives on the door while Steve and Amy watched for guards. Inside, they found 30 Zalani, huddled together in a single room. The aliens were terrified when the humans appeared, but Amy had learned some of their language from the distress signal. We are friends, she said in broken Zalani. We came to help. Older Zalani stepped forward. Her blue skin was marked with scars, and her large eyes showed both fear and hope.
You are the ones who answered our call?
Yes. We are humans. Came from far away to help your people. The elder Zalani began to cry. I am Cathara. I thought no one would come. The Vorthok told us that no other species would care about our suffering. How wrong they were, Steve said. Can you come with us? We need to learn about the enemy. Cathara nodded. I will tell you everything, but you must know the Vorthok are not just hunters. They are farmers. They keep some of us alive to breed. More food. They have done this for thousands of years across the galaxy. As they moved back toward their ship, Cathara explained the horrible truth. The Vorthok traveled from world to world, harvesting intelligent species. They kept detailed records of which planets had the best livestock. They had never faced real resistance because most species were peaceful, like the Zalani, they think. Of themselves as the perfect predators, Cathara said. They believe that intelligence exists only to feed them. They cannot imagine that prey might fight back. Back on the Shadow, Steve sent an urgent message to Admiral Hayes. The situation was worse than anyone had imagined. The Vorthok weren't just raiders. They were the galaxy's most efficient killers, and they had been perfecting their methods for millennia. But as Steve looked at the rescued Zilani, he felt something the Vorthok had never encountered before. These weren't just numbers on a tactical display. They were people with families, hopes, and dreams. These people who deserved to live free. The Vorthok were about to learn that humanity had its own definition of perfection. And it didn't involve treating other thinking beings as food. Admiral Hayes received the message as the main fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. She read Steve's report twice, then addressed her captains over the communication system. The enemy thinks they're farmers, and we're livestock. Today, we teach them the difference between prey and predators. Today, we show them what happens when humanity decides to protect the innocent. The largest fleet in human history jumped toward the Zilani system, carrying humanity's fury across the stars. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zilani system like an avenging storm. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the dreadnought UNS Retribution, watching dozens of Vorthok ships moving around Zalera Prime. The alien vessels looked like giant bugs feeding on a dying world. All ships, battle stations, she ordered. Her voice carried across the fleet to every captain and crew member. Today we end this nightmare. Major Kevin Ross suited up in his combat armor aboard the assault ship, Uns Thunder. He was 38 years old, built like a tank, and had never lost a battle. Around him, his Marines checked their weapons and equipment. Sergeant Lucy Martinez, his second in command, was loading extra ammunition into her rifle. "What's the plan, Major?" asked Corporal Danny Wright. He was young and nervous, but his hands were steady as he prepared his gear. "We hit the main processing center hard and fast," Kevin said. "Intelligence says there are thousands of Zilani prisoners there. We get them out, then we burn that place to the ground." The space battle began when the Vorthok detected the human fleet. Captain Nicole Stewart commanded the carrier Uns Fury, launching wave after wave of fighters. Her pilots were the best humanity had to offer, trained for exactly this kind of fight. "All squadrons, this is Control," Nicole announced. "Target the harvester ships first. Don't let them escape with prisoners." Pilot Frank Murphy led Squadron 7 and his fighter toward the largest Vorthok ship. His wingman, Lieutenant Grace Thompson, and Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez stayed close as they dodged the alien weapons fire. The Vorthok ships shot beams of green energy that could cut through steel like paper. "These things are fast," Grace said over the radio as she rolled her fighter away from enemy fire. "But they turn like flying bricks. Use that against them." Frank replied, "Stay mobile and hit their weak points." The Vorthok had never faced fighters this small and quick. Their weapons were designed to destroy large ships, not tiny human fighters that danced around them like angry wasps. Frank's squadron managed to damage several alien ships before the enemy could adapt, but the Vorthok had advantages too. Their ships seemed to heal themselves when damaged, and their weapons were more powerful than anything humans had ever seen. Admiral Hayes watched as 2 of her destroyers were cut in half by concentrated alien fire. "We need an edge," she said to her science officer, Dr. Rachel Webb. "What do we know about their technology?" Rachel was a thin woman with wild gray hair who understood machines better than people. She had been studying the sensor readings from the alien ships. "Their hulls are organic, Admiral. Part machine, part living tissue. That might be their weakness." "Explain." "Living tissue needs specific conditions to survive. If we can disrupt their biological systems, we might be able to shut down their ships." Meanwhile, the ground assault had begun. Kevin's Marines launched from their ships in armored drop pods, falling through the planet's atmosphere like meteors. The Vorthok ground forces were waiting for them. The aliens were even more terrifying up close. 12 feet tall, covered in scales and metal implants. With claws that could tear through armor, They moved like predators who had never known fear. But they had never fought human Marines before. "Contact front," Lucy shouted as her squad engaged a group of Vorthok warriors. The aliens were strong and fast, but they fought like hunters, not soldiers. They expected their prey to run in terror, not fight back with coordinated tactics. Danny Wright found himself face to face with a Vorthok that had cornered a group of Zalani children. The alien's red eyes showed surprise when the young Marine didn't flee. Instead, Danny opened fire with his assault rifle, putting every round into the creature's center mass. "Stay away from them," he yelled at the alien's corpse. "They're under our protection now." The fighting was brutal, but the humans had advantages the Vorthok hadn't expected. Human soldiers worked as teams, covering each other and using tactics the aliens couldn't understand, where the Vorthok saw individuals to be hunted. Humans saw brothers and sisters to be protected. Kevin led the assault on the main processing center, a massive building where thousands of Zalani were being held. The structure was like a nightmare factory, with conveyor belts carrying prisoners toward horrible machines. The sounds from inside made even the hardened Marines feel sick. "Blow the doors," Kevin ordered. His demolition expert placed charges on the main entrance, while the rest of the squad provided cover. The explosion echoed across the battlefield as the Marines stormed inside. What they found inside the building would haunt them forever. Row after row of cages filled with terrified Zalani, including children no bigger than human toddlers. The aliens had been sorted by age and size, like livestock being prepared for slaughter. "Get them out of here," Kevin shouted to his men, all of them now. The Marines worked frantically to free the prisoners while fighting off Vorthok guards. Lucy found herself protecting a group of young Zalani, while Danny and his squad held off alien reinforcements. The Zalani were so weak from captivity that many could barely walk. Back in space, Dr. Rachel had made a breakthrough. Working with Engineer Pete Campbell, she discovered that the Vorthok ships were vulnerable to a specific type of electromagnetic pulse. The frequency disrupted the connection between their organic and mechanical parts, all ships. "This is the retribution," Admiral Hayes announced. "Switch to EMP weapons. Target frequency 774. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vorthok ships that had seemed unstoppable suddenly went dark as their biological systems shut down. The organic hulls began to die, and the mechanical parts stopped working. One by one, the alien ships started falling toward the planet like diseased animals. Frank. Murphy watched a massive Vorthok harvester ship lose power and begin to break apart. "Control. This is Squadron 7. The big ones are going down."
Ow.
"Repeat. The harvester ships are falling." On the ground, the Vorthok forces began to retreat as their command ships died in orbit. Without coordination from above, the individual alien warriors were no match for organized human tactics. Kevin's Marines had cleared the processing center and were evacuating the last of the prisoners. The battle reached its climax when the Vorthok flagship, a ship the size of a small city, tried to escape with a cargo hold full of Zalani prisoners. Captain Morrison, who had started this whole mission, now commanded a task force of 6 ships in pursuit. "This is the Valiant to all ships," he announced. "Ship is carrying 10,000 prisoners. We don't let it escape." The chase led through the system's asteroid belt, where the Vorthok ship tried to use the rocks for cover. But human pilots had trained for exactly this kind of pursuit. Morrison's ship surrounded the alien vessel and pounded it with everything they had. The Vorthok ship finally died when its organic hull could no longer repair the damage. As it broke apart, escape pods launched, carrying the Zalani prisoners to safety. The last of the harvester fleet was destroyed. The nightmare was finally over. Admiral Hayes looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of the Vorthok fleet floating around Zalera Prime. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy's most efficient predators had been stopped. Humanity had answered the alien cry for help with fury, and the universe would never be the same. 3 months after the Battle of Zalera Prime, the galaxy had changed forever. Ambassador Helen Carter walked through the rebuilt streets of New Zalani City, watching human engineers work alongside Zalani farmers to restore what the Vorthok had destroyed. The city was rising from the ashes better than before. Helen was 45 years old. A former military officer who had become Earth's first ambassador to an alien species, Her brown hair was streaked with gray, and her blue eyes had seen both, the worst and best of what different species could do to each other. Today, she was meeting with Elder Cathara to discuss something that would reshape the entire galaxy. "The other species are listening now," Cathara said as they walked past. "Memorial to the victims of the Vorthok harvest?" The Zilani elder had recovered much of her strength, though the scars of captivity would never fully heal. "Word of what humanity did here has spread across the stars." "What kind of response are we getting?" Helen asked. "Desperate ones that have hidden in fear for generations are finally sending distress calls. The Thalassans, who live in the deep oceans of their world, have been enslaved by energy beings for 300 years. The Nexari, who are made of living crystal, face extinction from silicon parasites that eat their people." Helen nodded. Each new distress call that reached Earth got the same response: human ships jumping to hyperspace, carrying hope across. "The void? The Galactic Protection Accord is working then. Better than we hoped. 23 species have already joined. They're not just asking for protection anymore, they're offering to help protect others." Back on Earth, Admiral Hayes stood in the war room of the new Protectorate Command. The walls were covered with star maps showing distress signals from across the galaxy. Red dots marked species under attack, blue dots showed rescued worlds, and green dots indicated new allies willing to join the fight. Commander Steve Phillips, now promoted to captain, pointed to a cluster of red signals near the galactic core. "The Vorthok weren't the only predator species out there. We're getting reports of the Shodok Empire, which uses slave labor from a dozen different worlds. Void hunters, who steal the memories of entire civilizations. The bone collectors, who turn living beings into organic machines. How many ships can we deploy?" Hayes asked. "The Protectorate fleet now has vessels from 15 different species. The Zilani contributed their medical ships and agricultural technology. The Aquari built underwater bases for our submarines. The Crystalline Federation shared their energy shield technology." Heiss smiled. "The Predators spent so long keeping everyone afraid and divided. They never imagined what would happen if someone united the prey. On Zalera Prime, the new space station Unity orbited like a shining symbol of cooperation. Commander Julie Anderson ran the operations center, coordinating rescue missions across 3 sectors of the galaxy. She was 32 years old, brilliant with logistics, and had volunteered for this assignment because she believed in what they were building. "Commander, we have a new signal," reported her communications officer. "Unknown species, Andromeda. Sector, they're calling themselves the Valen." Julie pulled up the translation on her screen. The message was becoming familiar. Another species crying for help, another world under attack. But this time something was different. The Valen weren't just asking for rescue. They were offering to fight alongside whoever came to help them. "Patch me through to Admiral Hayes," Julie said. When the connection opened, she shared the message. "Sir, the Valen are requesting immediate assistance. But they're also offering intelligence on the enemy. Apparently they've been fighting a resistance war for 20 years. Who are they fighting? A machine intelligence called the Harvester Collective. It converts organic life into mechanical components for its ships. The Valen say it's already consumed 6 star systems and is moving toward populated sectors." Hayes considered this. The Protectorate fleet was spread thin, responding to dozens of crises across the galaxy. But they had learned something important from the Zilani rescue sometimes. One successful mission could inspire an entire region to stand up and fight back. "Prepare Task Force Delta. I want our best ships and most experienced crews." Oh, this sounds like another Vorthok situation. Commodore Morrison, now commanding the Rapid Response Division, received his orders while patrolling the former Vorthok territory. His task force included ships from 8 different species, all working together with an efficiency that would have seemed impossible a year ago. "Set course for the Andromeda sector," he told his navigator. Around him, his bridge crew included humans, Zilani, and members of 3 other allied species. They had learned to work together like parts of a single organism. "Sir," said his tactical officer, a Zilani named Thyler, Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures. In that direction, whatever's happening there, it's big. Then we better get there fast. All ships, maximum speed. As the task force jumped to hyperspace, Morrison reflected on how much had changed since that first distress signal. Humanity had set out to save one species and ended up becoming the protectors of dozens. But more importantly, they had shown the galaxy that predators could be stopped when prey refused to be victims. The rescue missions had become something larger, a revolution that was spreading from world to world. Species that had never fought back were learning to defend themselves. Civilizations that had hidden in fear were building weapons and joining the fight. The galaxy's long age of predators ruling over helpless prey was ending. Dr. Rachel Webb, now leading the Protectorate's research division, had been studying the pattern of predator species across the galaxy. Her findings were disturbing but also hopeful. The predators had been successful because they kept everyone isolated. She explained to a council of allied species leaders. They would attack one world at a time, while other species stayed hidden, and hoped they wouldn't be next. But once species started working together, the predator's advantage disappeared. Elder Kithara, now representing the Zilani on the Protectorate Council, added her own thoughts. The Vorthok told us that resistance was impossible. They said we were weak because we were peaceful, but they were wrong. Peace is not weakness, it's a choice. And when peaceful beings choose to fight for what's right, they become the strongest force in the universe. On Unity Station, Julie received confirmation that Task Force Delta had engaged the Harvester Collective. The first reports were encouraging. The machines had never faced coordinated resistance before and were struggling to adapt to multi-species tactics. But more importantly, the Valan resistance had inspired other species in their region to join the fight. What had started as a rescue mission was becoming a liberation campaign, dozens of worlds rising up against their mechanical oppressors. Julie looked at the galaxy map, where red dots were slowly turning blue as more worlds were freed. Green dots marked new allies joining the Protectorate. The pattern was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Commander, her aide asked, "Do you think we can actually do it? Free the entire galaxy?" Julie thought about the Zilani children she had seen in those processing centers, and the look of hope in Elder Kithara's eyes when the first human ships arrived. She thought about all the species still sending distress calls into the void, hoping someone would hear them. "We have to," she said simply, "because the alternative is leaving good people to suffer while we have the power to help them. Humanity doesn't do that anymore." Across the galaxy, the word was spreading. When innocents cried for help, someone would answer. The age of predators was ending, and the age of protectors had begun. Humanity had found its true purpose among the stars, and the universe would never be the same again.